You wake up one morning, the news announces that the price of your favorite coffee has dropped by 5%, gasoline is 10% cheaper, and your apartment rent has also decreased. Sounds like a dream, right? Money stretching further, purchasing power skyrocketing, a bargain paradise. But what if I told you that, in the real economy, this blessing could quickly turn into a nightmare, a downward spiral that devours jobs, dreams, and even the very fabric of society, a condition known as deflation? It's the opposite of inflation, where prices generally fall over time, which sounds incredibly good on the surface, an era of abundance and affordability. But history and economic theory show us that persistent deflation is one of the most insidious diseases an economy can contract, a silent virus that corrodes prosperity from the inside out. And we are going to uncover every layer of this invisible danger now. Let's start with the initial temptation. If prices are falling, why buy today what will be cheaper tomorrow? This is the first and most devastating trap of deflation, a vicious cycle where consumers postpone purchases in the hope of even lower prices, resulting in a drastic drop in demand for products and services. Imagine yourself thinking, why would I buy a new car today if it will cost 15% less in 6 months? This waiting mentality is rational for the individual but catastrophically irrational for the economy as a whole, because companies that don't sell don't need to produce, factories stop, inventories pile up, and the inevitable consequence is reduced production and, of course, worker layoffs. And here we enter the next phase of the nightmare, mass unemployment. With demand falling and companies laying off, fewer people have income to spend, which, in turn, further reduces demand, creating a negative feedback loop that accelerates price drops and increases unemployment, a true economic snowball effect. Furthermore, to survive, companies need to cut costs even more, and labor is often the first target, leading to waves of layoffs that spread like a wildfire, turning entire communities into economic ghost towns, where the silence of inactivity speaks louder than any economic boom. But the terror of deflation doesn't stop there. The burden of debt becomes unbearable. Think about it. If you took out a $100,000 loan for your home and prices fall by 20%, the real value of your debt, in terms of purchasing power, has increased to the equivalent of $120,000, while the value of your salary and property is shrinking. This is devastating for individuals, businesses, and even governments, as debt payments, which were already fixed, now represent an ever larger slice of declining income, leading to widespread defaults, business bankruptcies, and ultimately, a systemic financial crisis that threatens to collapse the banking system itself. Banks, suffocated by unpaid loans and devalued assets, tighten credit conditions, or stop lending altogether, further strangling the flow of capital that drives the economy. History is full of grim examples of deflation in action. The Great Depression in the 1930s in the United States was a brutal deflationary era where prices fell by more than 10% annually in some periods, leading to massive unemployment that reached 25% of the workforce and unspeakable human suffering, with the global economy plunging into an unprecedented collapse. More recently, Japan experienced decades of deflation and stagnant growth, known as the lost decades, where, despite massive stimulus injections and near-zero interest rates, the economy struggled to escape the deflationary trap, showing how difficult it is to reverse this trend once it sets in. But what causes this destructive force? Deflation can be triggered by several factors, including a reduction in the money supply, where the amount of money in circulation decreases, making money more valuable and, consequently, prices cheaper. Another cause can be a sharp drop in aggregate demand, perhaps due to a financial crisis, a pandemic, or a deep recession that leads consumers to tighten their belts and companies to cut investments. Rapid technological progress can also, in theory, lead to good deflation where prices fall due to innovations that make production cheaper, like the drop in electronics prices, but when this technological deflation mixes with weak demand, the result can be equally dangerous. Additionally, an overly tight fiscal policy or a large surplus of goods and services without corresponding demand can push prices down. So, who really wins and who loses in this grim scenario? The big theoretical winners would be savers, as the value of their saved money increases, but this victory is hollow if the economy collapses and there are no investment opportunities. Wage earners with long-term contracts, whose wages cannot be cut as easily, may see their purchasing power increase, but this is an exception, as most wages tend to fall along with prices and, more importantly, the risk of losing their job is immense. The big losers, without a doubt, are debtors, whether individuals, businesses, or governments, as the real value of their debts skyrockets. Businesses suffer enormously from falling profits, asset devaluation, and difficulty passing on costs, leading to cascading bankruptcies. Workers, as we've seen, face the imminent risk of unemployment and lower wages. Faced with such a threat, how do central banks and governments react? The fight against deflation is incredibly difficult because traditional monetary policy tools, such as lowering interest rates, lose their effectiveness when rates are already near zero, a phenomenon known as the liquidity trap. At this point, central banks may resort to unconventional measures, such as quantitative easing, QE, which involves the massive purchase of government bonds and other assets to inject money into the economy, trying to force banks to lend and consumers to spend. Other tactics include negative interest rates, where banks are effectively charged to hold reserves, encouraging them to lend, and forward guidance, where the central bank commits to keeping rates low for a long period to influence expectations. On the fiscal side, governments can implement stimulus packages, such as infrastructure spending or tax cuts, to increase demand and create jobs, but this often leads to an increase in public debt, a considerable risk in a deflationary environment. Now, the what would happen if inflation became negative for a prolonged period? Imagine yourself in 2026, and prices have fallen by 5% in the last year, with forecasts indicating further drops. As a consumer, you postpone buying that new smartphone or that vacation trip, hoping prices will fall even more. Stores are empty, businesses are desperate to get rid of inventory, cutting prices even further, which generates more losses. Construction stops, as the value of existing properties plummets. Banks, seeing a massive increase in defaults, stop making new loans, freezing credit. Governments, seeing their tax revenue plummet and real debt explode, face impossible choices between cutting essential services or going even deeper into debt in a frozen credit market. Consumer and investor confidence evaporates, resulting in widespread pessimism that reinforces the deflationary cycle, leading to stagnation that can last for years or even decades. Your boss announces that, For the company to survive, wages will have to be cut by 10%, and you find yourself caught in a vicious cycle where your purchasing power, despite falling prices, is constantly threatened by job loss or wage reduction, and the cost of living, although nominally cheaper, becomes unfeasible without a stable income. It's crucial to distinguish between good and bad deflation. Good deflation is the result of technological progress and increased productivity, where the prices of certain goods and services fall because they are produced more efficiently and cheaply, as we've seen with computers and televisions. This is a sign of a healthy and innovative economy. However, bad deflation, the type we are discussing, is caused by a generalized contraction in demand or the money supply, resulting in a generalized fall in prices and, more importantly, wages and employment, leading to a deep recession or depression. The key is that, while the first is a sign of progress, the second is a symptom of economic disease, and central banks prefer to fight moderate inflation than to face the abyss of uncontrolled deflation. In short, although the idea of constantly falling prices may seem like a shopper's paradise at first glance, the reality of deflation is one of the deepest and most insidious threats to economic health, a bottomless pit of weak demand, unemployment, and unsustainable debt that can cripple a nation for generations. Understanding deflation is not just an economic curiosity, it is fundamental to understanding the challenges that policymakers face and how the decisions made today can shape our future. Now, we want to know your opinion. Had you ever stopped to think about the consequences of deflation? Leave your comment below, share this video with anyone who needs to understand this vital concept, and subscribe to the channel to unravel more mysteries of the world of economics. Have you ever imagined waking up to the price of your favorite coffee falling, cheaper gas, and your rent decreasing? Sounds like paradise, right? But what if I told you that, in the real economy, this blessing can turn into a nightmare that devours jobs and dreams, a condition called deflation? It's the opposite of inflation, where prices fall, and it sounds too good to be true. And it is. In this video, we are going to uncover how persistent deflation is one of the most dangerous diseases an economy can contract, a silent virus that corrodes prosperity from within. Get ready to understand why. History and economic theory show us that this bargain can be a recipe for chaos. Don't miss this crucial analysis. Click the subscribe button now, hit the bell icon, and share this video so more people understand the invisible danger of deflation and how it can affect us all. Let's unravel this economic mystery together.